Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 31st of July, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar index, flat over the last couple of days, but still bullish on the long and medium term charts. Remembering that basically this is my long term, my medium term, and my short term view. Looking at the euro, we see that the euro is actually looking a little bit better on the short term chart, just wandering into bullish territory, but medium and long term, we're still bearish on the euro. Against the yen, the dollar is just falling back slightly, not bearish yet, so just one to keep an eye on there. And sterling, of course, has dived this week. We seem to have found a floor at around 120, we talked about that yesterday. That's the level to watch. If we break this level, then we activate further downside targets, so quite key there. Against the euro, we're sitting at 109.11. And the 110 level breached yesterday and the day before, so that's quite critical, obviously, for sterling. We're seeing here 2-year lows starting to emerge, and so we're looking bearish there as well. And again, if we break this low, we activate a further downside target to 102, so we start to see parity against the euro. Looking at the Swiss franc, we see sterling sitting at 120.57, pretty bearish there as well, no surprises there, and against the Aussie dollar also bearish. Bitcoin sitting at $9,760, just improving on the short-term chart, but still bearish in the medium and long term. Looking at the S&P 500 index, we fell back yesterday, much as the futures predicted. Still holding on to the bullish time on all three time frames, and the same with the Nasdaq. Interesting results with Apple there after hours, and we'll have a look at those charts in a minute. And the Dow also looking a little bit lower as well. The Russell 2000 just struggling to break to new highs on the long-term chart, but short-term making a move, and medium-term starting to look really quite good on the lagging line in the cloud. The futures this morning up slightly on the S&P future, and the Nasdaq E-mini up 1/3%, so looking better there. In the UK, the top 100 index is down 0.2% this morning, so we're seeing stocks just struggling there. Midcaps relatively flat, holding on to their bullish stance on the short-term chart. The DAX in Germany is flat as well. Had a terrible day yesterday, down over 1%, and we can see it's in short-term bearish territory. And the CAC similarly fell as well. Overnight in Japan, we were 0.5% down on the Japanese market, and looking at the Hang Seng in Hong Kong, we're down 1.3%. These markets now starting to react in Asia. China down 0.7%, also looking bearish on all three time frames. India down 0.1%. It's this medium-term chart that's worrying me the most there on the Sensex at the moment. Looking at the S&P Australian index, holding on to its all-time highs here, looking pretty good. So the one index that's really bucking the trend. Brent crude sitting at 65.40 this morning, rising. Tensions in the Gulf still continue to hold the price of oil higher, but it still has work to do on the medium and long-term charts. WTI also looking pretty bullish as well, sitting at 58.47. US nat gas sitting at $2.14, so we're really just languishing around this just above the $2 level now. Gold sitting at 14.30 this morning, bullish on all three time frames, still looking pretty good all round. And silver down this morning, but still holding on to its bullish position. US 10-year yields sitting at 2.05%, little change over the last 24 hours. And German the Bund future just up as well. Looking at Apple, results out from Apple last night, which were disappointing on earnings, but a little bit of excitement on wearables doing better than expected. So it will be interesting to see. We're in this uptrend on Apple on all three time frames. Be interesting to see if they break down at all. Quick look at the stocks now. You see a sea of red there on my Yahoo screen. Looking at the Dow 30, the worst performers were Pfizer again. They were down 6%. They had a terrible day the day before. They're having a really bad week, putting them into bearish territory. So real reversal of fortune there for Pfizer. Procter & Gamble up 3.8% on the other hand. So it's just a complete mirror effect there in the pharmaceuticals in the majors in the Dow. Looking at the Nasdaq, best performer was Insight Corporation. They were up 6%. Starting to look like they're making a long-term bullish transition there. Tesla also up 2.7%, but not enough really to change the chart picture here. And if we look at the worst performer, JD.com, they were down 3%. And that bearish long-term chart still bearish there. Netflix amongst the losers there as well, down 2%. Really haven't recovered since that subscriber numbers report last month. So quite interesting there. In the Aussie market, best performer was IPH Limited, up 4%. Great looking chart. And if we look at the downside, we had Adelaide and Brighton Group down 18%. CYBG were down 13%. So they've really had a terrible week. Looking into India now, Yes Bank were the worst performer yesterday, best performer today, a real seesaw, but the chart is still terrible. And on the worst stock was Z Entertainment, also falling away quite heavily. Taking a look at Europe now, we start with the UK market. Next is the best performer, up 6.8%. Centrica had a terrible day yesterday, a little bit of a relief rally this morning, but not great. And then if we look at the St James's Place, they're the worst performer this morning, down 4.6. Lloyds down on making bigger provisions for PPI, so they're falling away this morning, not looking great there either. Looking at the midcaps in the UK, we've got Computer Centre, they're up 10%, so that chart's starting to look pretty good. And if we look at Into Properties, the worst performer, down 16% this morning, really falling away there. Aston Martin down a further 12%. Life just not getting any better for them, so we're seeing quite big falls there. In Europe, looking at the top 50, BNP Paribas, they're actually making a bit of a rebound after a terrible day yesterday, but the chart's still looking pretty bad. And then if we look at the worst performers, L'Oreal, Unibail in Amsterdam also just falling away. So we are just seeing quite a few stocks still being hit quite hard. Even though the US market's making new all-time highs, a lot of stocks in pretty bad downtrends. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.